In this interview, Linda Rising is sharing a message for younger people. Two, how long it took her and Marilyn to write their first book. Three, how trees support each other. And four, why she hangs out with younger people and you should do the same thing. Check it out. I'm Yves Hanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. So, welcome, Linda Rising.
Thank you, Yves. It's nice to be here.
Well, that brings me immediately here. Where is it? For me, here is Belgium, and it's almost well, it's a little bit after 8 o'clock in the evening. And where are you?
I am just outside Nashville, Tennessee. That's Music City, and it
Oh
is
yeah,
a little after 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
in the afternoon. And if I'm well informed, you just had your birthday last week,
I did. It was a
and
big
yeah,
one. Yeah, it was
I don't.
80. This was my 80th birthday.
That also makes you probably the oldest person I'm interviewing here,
I'll
or the
bet.
most wisely, probably, because yeah, you have most life experience from each and everyone. But on top of that, well, tell us a little more. What do you want people to know about you? Who is Linda Rising?
Linda Rising is someone who lives near Nashville who does independent consulting and training. It's something that I've been doing now for several decades. So I consider myself to be very agile because, yes, I'm interested in agile, but I'm interested in lots of things. And I think what I've seen during the pandemic is that people come to me and they ask a question and they say, Linda, we would like to know more about Scrum or retrospectives or something about agile practices. But really, what they want to know has to do with how anxious they are, how afraid they are, how worried they are, how healthy are they. They're worried about their children. They're worried about their country. They're worried about their future. And that's really what's on people's minds right now. It's the ultimate test for agility. And I feel like I have learned a lot in the last 2 or 3 years about how to help, how to give people something to think about, how to offer some hope.
I like that. And while we're speaking at this right moment, so recording this at the end of March, I don't know yet when it will go live, but at the end of March, while your president is inside my country, actually, I was in Brussels
Yep.
today where there's lots of things going on because Joe Biden is here. So we were not allowed to go so everywhere in Brussels where where I
Okay.
wanted to go for security reasons. And yeah, the reason is for once not the pandemic, but the war that's happening or that Putin is doing to Ukraine. So yeah, there's a lot of people have that part on their mind as well. So that's definitely, and I like the way you phrase it because agility is about adapting to the situation, and the situation is a lot of things happening that makes a lot of people fear at this moment.
Yep.
So I want to jump right into that very first question, and that is what is something people usually don't know about Linda, and that has still influenced you in who you are.
Well, I don't know whether most people know it or not, but I'm a musician. I have a lot of musical training, a lot of musical experience, and not only with playing an instrument and singing and dancing, but also directing. And
Oh,
and so when my husband retired and we moved into this community near Nashville, we started an orchestra and we teach people how to play instruments and we do performances. So when the pandemic hit, we thought, well, what can we do? Because people are afraid to get together, to rehearse, to get together, to perform. So we realized that if we divided our orchestra up into groups of 8 people, we could rehearse in our garage with the door open, and we could sit
Mm.
in a circle and work on whatever our music was for the next performance. And not only was it good to keep the orchestra going, but all of our neighbors could hear us rehearsing, and it was a way for them to stay connected. They would come by, they would stand out in the street, they would listen to us rehearse. One of the most popular tunes was called Taps, which is a military song played at funerals. And we played that for several of our community members. We played Taps.
That's and so you, if I understand correctly, you played it with 6 other friends because you and your husband, you're doing
Yes,
this together, and
yes,
so then you have 6 friends in your garage, and then you have the rest of the street watching or listening
yeah,
and maybe joining in, and then
yeah.
other parts of the orchestra are doing the same thing in another street somewhere else in town.
No,
Something
they
like
all came to our house. So we have
ah.
rehearsals 3 times a week. So
Hmm.
every day is a different group. And so we're always sitting in the garage, and we did that even when it was very hot outside. It does get hot and humid in Nashville. Also cold. We even bought a heater that sits in the middle of our circle. So we sit around the heater when it gets winter time. Even in the rain, we play.
Wow. And you're so in that sense, because it's always on your at your house, that in that
Yes.
sense you're always the middle of the, well, to keep the orchestra together one way or another. And
Yes.
and that's it.
And
It's
I think
interesting.
it made a huge difference because so many orchestras, groups, companies, teams could not meet.
Hmm.
They couldn't gather. They didn't find a way to gather together. And so we kept the orchestra going by keeping these groups small, small groups of 8, and moving everything out of our garage so that we could all sit in a circle. And then we were able to perform because we have a clubhouse here that has a cover on the outside, a patio with a cover, and we could sit under that patio. And for instance, last year we gave a Beatles concert and a Christmas concert, patriotic songs concert. So we were able to play outside. So
That's
for
that's
people,
really nice. That and so you really concert, because that was would have been my follow-up question. Did you have any concerts? So you did have
yes,
multiple thematic concerts. That's what I'm hearing around certain things. That's
yes,
and was that done with the full orchestra? No, that's always with 8 people or something like
no,
that.
we could put everybody together. We were
Okay.
separated, but as long as you're outside, at least even in early 2020, before there was a vaccine, the suggestion was that if you were outside and not too close, then it
Then
would
it
be
was okay.
okay. And that's what we did. So we were separated, and our group, our little orchestra of 16 people, we could sit under the overhang and we could play. And then the audience would bring their own chairs, and they would sit on the driveway or as far away as they wanted to, just to be able to listen. So music for me is
It's connecting.
important, and it's a way of connecting people. It's a language that people use to understand what's going on, and that we were able to keep that going even
Even in
through
the pandemic.
the worst of the pandemic meant so much, not only for the players, but also for those in the audience. That was so important.
Music is always a way to connect, and I have some professional musician friends that really had trouble to connect, because, well, they tried to rehearse over the internet, and that didn't work, and so some played indeed some small gigs outside houses and things like that. But yeah, as groups, it was not always easy. So that it's really nice that you found a way how to make that happen. And it's yeah, it's really nice, like you say, it makes a connection, and that
We were
kind of goes.
agile. We were
Yes,
agile.
you were agile, adapting to the situation to make what it works. Indeed, it kind of brings me more or less already a little bit to the next question. That if you had not been to IT, what would have become of you? So partly you are already a musician, but was there another part in your life that you imagine if you would not have been in IT? There another part of Linda there?
Yeah, well, as you can imagine, since I'm now 80 years old, when I began my professional career, there was no software engineering, there was no computer science. I never had a computer, I never had a computer class. I
Mm.
started out life as a chemist. My
As a chemist,
bachelor's,
wow.
my bachelor's degree is in chemistry, and I worked as a chemist for a while. And we don't want this story to be too long. But then I decided that wasn't for me. I went back to school. I got a degree in mathematics. I
Hmm.
taught mathematics at university, and I was working on my PhD when I met somebody that you probably have never heard of. His name is Jim Caristi. I met him at a conference, and I went up to him because Caristi is such an unusual last name. And I said, "Oh, are you related to the man who wrote Caristi's theorem?" And he said, "That's me, Caristi's
Wow.
theorem, named after me." And I got so excited, and I said, "Oh my goodness."
Mm.
I said, "Well, what are you working on now?" And he said, "I'm teaching COBOL in an
Mm.
introductory computer science class." I said, "Oh, that's horrible. How terrible for you, somebody who has a theorem named after them is teaching COBOL." And he said, "No." He said, "You will understand as you work on your PhD that it will take you so long to find anything that's interesting, that hasn't already been done, that anybody else will understand." Whereas in computer science, you can start out in the introductory level course and you're already at the frontier. There's
Oh.
so much going on. So he really started me on the path to thinking, maybe I should think about this. It took me several years to kind of turn around and go back to school again and ultimately get a PhD in computer science. But that's something that came so much later in my life. And I know along the way, I could have taken any one of a number of other paths. And in fact, if I had a message for people who are younger, and everybody is younger than I am, I think, that it would be, you don't know what you're going to do. Because in 10 years, what you're doing now might not even be possible, or you might not be interested in it, or you might not care about it, or you might not think it's important. And instead of worrying that, oh my, I might have to change my mind, or I might have to take a different path, you should expect that. It's going to
I like
happen.
I like that message, because yeah, I have three children in the middle. Well, in one in university already, and two others almost on their way. And indeed, sometimes there is the worry. I should pick. This is the most important choice of my life, and I keep telling them,
No,
no, it's not. It's
no,
not.
it's not.
You're going to, and you're a very nice example, because you have multiple degrees at university. You have a PhD that has nothing to do with the other ones that you got. I think, weren't you 50 when you got your PhD, something like that? Is
Yes,
that correct? So
Yes,
that
I
that
was. I did go back, and that was my goal, was to finish by 50, and I just made it. I did my PhD defense 1 month before my 50th birthday. And at the time, the other graduate students and the other colleagues that I had were saying, wow, you're so late in getting started. You know, you're probably not going to have much time to get anything done. And of course, that was 30 years ago. So I've still had more than I was already doing computer science things before I got the PhD, because I also have a master's. So over 30 years, even with that late start. So don't ever feel, and in fact, I know that in the audience there are people who say, "Oh, I'm already 30 years old. I'm too old to start over." No, you're not.
No,
It's
that
too
it's a
late.
nice example, and maybe this might be the right moment to also ask people if you're doesn't matter which age you are, if you're wondering about what something, put in the comments and what you're interested in, and what are the challenges that you think there are, because like what you say, Linda, is a lot of fear is there that is not true about aging and about other things. It's there's so much more that can bring us. And for me, that brings me kind of to the next question as well, is that you talk about all these different kind of things, but is there something that you consider today your biggest challenge, or maybe a big challenge that you want to share, and that still is a good thing for you? Is there something that you can share with the people?
So there is a challenge, and that is getting older. That as you get
Hmm.
older, things do get harder. Things get physically harder, things get mentally harder. One of the things that happens as you get older is your colleagues, the people who are your age, may not be healthy. A lot of the people I went to high school with, I graduated in 1959, most of them are not alive. And, and so the idea that you want to keep on going, and you want to keep growing, and you want to keep changing, and you want to keep learning, even in the face of all the evidence that you're surrounded by people who aren't able to do that, it's hard to keep going sometimes. That has been especially true during the pandemic, that the
I
older
have.
people have been hit hardest.
And these are people your age, or sometimes even younger, that you see falling away. I can
Yeah.
imagine that. I just had last weekend that we had a reunion, a high school reunion, and one of the participants joked, "Okay, we're 50 now, so maybe by the next time in 10 years, some of us might not be there because now everybody was still alive." But yeah, statistically, it's the chances are lower that we'll all be alive in 10 years, and that's I
Yep.
don't feel limited by my age. I think neither do you, but I do understand indeed that when you look around, that yeah, the world is different, or the people around you are not the same, or yeah, not everybody is still there. That I can imagine that this is a challenge. And
So,
is there a good part to that for you?
well, yes, because what you have to do, what you always have to do, is you have to focus on younger people. That when you start, your colleagues and your friends are all pretty much the same age. The people you go to school with, the person you marry, most of your friends who live in your neighborhood are all the same age. And you should be prepared to focus on younger and younger people, realizing that not only are you going to lose colleagues who are your age, but those younger people will see things differently, and they will do things different.
Hmm.
And that's your best hope for staying in a learning mode, staying in an agile mode, staying in a resilient mode, is to hang around with younger people. Not that you will ever delude yourself into thinking that you're 50 years old when you're 80, but it does help you focus on a different part of the world. Whereas if you only hang around with people who are your age, as you get older, that focus gets narrower and narrower and narrower. It's a real danger.
Because of a lot of, yeah, the people, there's less people, they keep focusing on what they do. And yeah, in that sense, yeah, you've always been, or at least I've met you multiple times now at conferences where you mingle with the younger people, let's put it like that. You will probably not go out dancing at the agile conference in evenings, or maybe not until as
Maybe.
late as many of the young people. um, Probably hang out with the musicians, but still, yeah, you do hang out with the people to learn about it, because that's what I see. You also, you're not just there for talking. You are there for the whole work conversations, and you talk to each and everyone. And so that's indeed something I see you doing. So um, it also brings me to that next question, because it feels for me much more even logical than in other conversations. Because you're at this age, you still are a very driven person. You really are. Yeah, you are around and you talk with us about all these things. Do you know what drives you? What is for you something that drives you?
So I think it's related to that earlier question, which is even though I'm still active and I feel good and I don't have any serious illnesses and things are going okay, I know that at 80, I'm closer to the end than the beginning, and that I don't have all the time in the world. And if I'm going to do something, be something, learn something, I got to do it now. I can't feel
Mhm.
like, oh, I can do it tomorrow. I remember that feeling in earlier decades was, oh, I have plenty of time. And I think maybe that's true for everybody. This is something Steve Jobs taught me when he was dying. He said, there's nothing that focuses the mind so much as knowing that you don't have much time left. And
Hmm.
that's true for all of us.
We don't need to be dying to remind about that focus. That's what you're
No,
saying.
no, that's
Exactly. It,
yes. So
it's
now,
interesting, because for me, you talk about both aspects. You talk about people in their 40 or 50 sometimes thinking, I'm too old to do something. No, you can still do something. And at the same time, even if you're 80 or whatever, you can still focus on what is important, which is two sides of the same coin, saying also the same message, like focus and do whatever you want to do. Don't let your age define you in a way. Yeah, that's a nice message, I think. And it, yeah, I like it, because even at your age, you show much more resilient, and you show much more energy to do the things you want to do than sometimes 20-year-olds have, because they feel lost. Or yeah, I know people when I was at university that said, oh, but yeah, the best time of my life is past. I'm like, yeah, but there still is a lot of time left. I mean, if that if that's the best time of your life, well, then I feel kind of sad about it for you for the rest of the next couple of decades. um
yeah,
yeah, and you keep, yeah, trying. And like you say, of course, the chances that you will become 160 is rather small. So there is definitely more time passed than we'll still have. um and lucky you are really healthy. So
yes,
that is indeed very nice. And like you say, well, I assume that there is always a little more health issues than when you're 20, of course. But luckily, and in that sense, it's nice that you live in the current times, because there's so much more solutions for a lot of the things that were there. If I
yes.
look at yeah, things that my mother has, that sometimes is, yeah, there are solutions if it's surgery or if it's other things that are much better than so many years ago, so many decades
We
ago.
also know that people in Ukraine in recent months were eating out at restaurants, were enjoying life, were thinking that life goes on, things are okay, and then suddenly they're not.
Mhm.
So we've seen two major examples of that in Ukraine and now the global pandemic. So we should all be aware that we can't anticipate all those black swans, those unexplained events that just suddenly arrive and take us all by surprise. So the idea that you can forecast and determine what your own life will be like, we should all have now experienced that that's not the case.
Mhm. Well, and
We're in
especially
that
when
moment.
the example of Ukraine, it's I've been in last time I was in Kiev was in 2015. That was after Putin had already tried to annex part of their country, and I remember that the people were talking and discussing late in the evening. They were worried about what's literally happening now, but so in a sense they predicted it, but they didn't predict when it would happen and how big it would happen and how it would happen. And especially even if I believed them at the time, I never would have guessed that it would have such a global impact for each and everyone. So that's definitely a much bigger swan than big black swan than I realized at that time. So
Yeah.
that's thank you for reminding us about that, because it's indeed it's and the pandemic is another example where I see the most agile people indeed understand that we cannot predict it, and we need to adapt to the situation, where I see other people sometimes thinking, oh, we should have better models and we should have better predictions and we should know exactly and we should have perfect legislation or whatever. It's like, yeah, no.
Yeah, like
It's
likely not. Likely not.
no, no,
So,
exactly.
so seize the day. Carpe diem.
Carpe diem, indeed. I want to go to the next question, and yeah, I don't know if you consider something a biggest achievement, but is there something that you're really proud of that you say, okay, for me, that I consider a big achievement?
So I don't know how I did it, but I somehow have either been lucky or I don't know whether it was done intentionally, but I have so many wonderful people in my life, and especially in the last few years, I think I've realized it that not only the people who are close to me, like my husband and my daughter, but my colleagues, my writing partner, Mary Lynn Mans, and other people who have either helped me or have worked with me, who have been part of the Agile community, who are part of the Patterns community, who are part of the software development community. All those people, I feel that somehow I have this network of connections, of community, of people that in this time since 2020, I still feel a connection and I
Mm.
have the benefit. These people have done things for me and I have done things for them. And it didn't just happen. It's something that has grown over time. It has been an evolutionary thing that somehow I don't know whether I directed it or whether I had any causal impact on it, but now I have it. I have this huge, vast, enormous. I, it caused me to give a talk just recently about trees. And what I've learned about trees is they're connected underground. The science
Mm.
that the trees help each other. Even though you look at a tree and you think, well, this tree doesn't go anywhere, it has no mobility, it has no way. of having any interaction with other plants or other trees, but it does.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And so that became a metaphor for me because we are all like that now. We can't be in the same room, but we have a way of connecting
Connecting. Hmm.
somehow and staying together and helping each other. And there are some trees that have more connections than others. They have as many connections as there are trees in the forest. They're huge, and they have a name for these trees. They're called mother trees,
Wow. Okay.
and I think that's what I am.
Hmm.
I am a mother tree for all of the people in my community and all of these connections, all of these people are because I've been sending out help and information. We've been sharing, and now we're all connected.
That's real wonderful. I had no idea that trees were connected. And
Yeah.
is it when you say some trees have more connections than other, is it also depending on types of trees? Have some types of trees more connections than others? We don't know.
No, it's mostly age.
Mm.
So the
Because
old trees,
they connect stronger in a way.
yes, and the old trees help the young trees.
Mm.
So the old trees know, they know where the young trees are and who needs help, and
Wow.
they send minerals, they send water, they send information, they help
That's
those young trees survive.
that's yeah, wow. I'm blown away by that information. I keep every time I listen to you, if it's a talk, if it's a personal conversation, I learn so much. I had no idea. That is yeah,
It's
because
a
I we
metaphor. It's a metaphor because in the agile community we talk about collaboration and connection. And now there's a real life physical metaphor for that because the trees do exactly that. They are all connected and they share, they help each other, they
like
share
mothers do.
information. And
It's
the ones that are connected the most, the mother trees, they will even do that as they are dying. As
wow.
they're dying, they will send help to the younger trees around them saying, I'm dying, but I want you to survive. So I'm going to help you. I will send you my last bit of information, my last round of minerals, the water that I have. I will send that to you so that you can survive. I
That's
love it.
yeah.
I love that
That
metaphor.
that really brings down the metaphor of a mother because that's what
Yes,
mothers do. At the same time, I think like I keep thinking about the well what people tell in the plane is that you first have to take care of yourself because then you're better to help others. But
yes,
I imagine that these trees they know that there is a certain point where they can't help themselves anymore. When it's over, it's over.
yes.
It's a really nice metaphor. You've been talking also about your writing partner and the patterns. So maybe it's time also to bring up the book because we didn't
Ah,
talk about it yet. You wrote these two wonderful books together with Marilyn, Fearless Change about the patterns, and then the More Fearless Change.
yeah.
I'm a huge fan of both books. I assume this is also what helped you to create your network or to yeah share with the world what you've learned. I don't know if there's anything you want to talk about these things.
Well, I think for me, when people ask me, is there a book that changed your life? And they're looking for a book that I might have read or studied. But for me, the book that changed my life was Fearless Change. because in the beginning I was a PhD. I was very technical. I considered myself a designer or an architect. I was interested primarily in technical solutions. And when Mary
Mm.
Lynn and I started writing the book, I thought the patterns we were looking for, I thought they were technical. How
Mm.
how do you convince other people? What kind of information does it take? How should you present that information? Who are the people you should target? I thought it was going to be a technical book. And it wasn't until along the way, as I saw what is it that you do to move people in a given direction? How do you influence people? What is it they are looking for? What are other people thinking? That I realized I was so wrong. It's not a technical thing, it's a people thing. And I didn't
Well,
really know a lot about how to do that. And I had to really learn as we were writing the book. The book did take 10 years.
wow, that's a
And
long time.
that's one of the reasons why is that I was so misunderstanding of what it was we were trying to do. And I had to learn, I had to sort of run in place to catch up to understand what those patterns were all about. And by the time we finished, I was a completely different person.
Mhm.
So
It,
it
it
did,
reminds me, it reminds me of a conversation I had today about soft skills and hard skills, and sometimes people look for, yeah, the so-called soft skills or the hard skills. A little bit
right.
similar to what you say. We talk about hard skills about whatever learning in IT or whatever, and you were looking for hard skills, but you found the soft skills along the way, in a sense.
Yeah.
But they were your hard
I,
skills
I
to learn.
resisted. I didn't
Yeah.
like it. I resisted. I kept thinking, no,
Ah.
no, we don't want to talk about psychology. I don't know
Mm.
anything about psychology. Oh no, this sounds like influence strategies. I'm really not suspicious. I'm not sure. I was resistant. I was reluctant. I fought it every step of the way. And it took a long time for me to change. But
And how
I
was
did.
your partner in that crime and learning, Marilyn? Was she before you, helping you discover it, or were you doing
She
that
already
together?
knew. She was
Ah,
way ahead of me. She was way ahead of me, and she
that's
helped
it.
me.
She didn't tell you up front that you were wrong. She just helped you
No,
discover it.
well, we didn't ever talk about it. We just thought we would
Ah,
document these patterns, and we each had very different ideas about what they were. But as we uncovered the patterns, I would say, "Oh, I've seen that," and she would say, "Yeah, I've used this," and we would talk about. And then I kept thinking, "No, wait a minute. This is not what I thought we would be
we were
doing."
going to.
Hmm. Yeah. No, she already knew. She was way ahead of me. She's younger too, so I was learning from her.
As you explained earlier on, you surround yourself with people younger than you and you learn from them.
That's
Uh,
right.
but but still you were resisting because you thought you knew, or you thought you were wanting to learn something else. That's a nice
Yep.
story to share.
Yep.
Because that happens a lot indeed when we are working with people. We want to learn, but at the same time, sometimes we're not ready for the message that we're learning, and then it can take, like you say, it can take 10 years before we actually learn the message. That's an interesting way of looking and learning indeed. Thank you for sharing that. I want to go to the next question, which is about personal agility. Do you have, because I know you learn so much, you read so much. Is there something that you do yourself that is a tip that for learning or for how you organize yourself that you can share with the people?
So after I read the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman and doing research on his model of system 1 thinking, system 2 thinking, and now all of the follow-on research that has come
Mhm.
after that book, how is it that we take advantage of these two systems and our way of thinking and solving problems and making decisions. And the most important tip that has come out of all of that work that I always recommend to people who are either hearing me talk about that or taking a class on thinking or decision making is this: don't ever waste time trying to solve something really complicated or make a hard decision. Don't give it more than, and for me, it's 10 minutes. If I can't come up
Wow.
with a solution, so this is a really complicated problem, I have no idea how to do anything about it, or maybe a decision about something difficult. If I can't solve it, if I can't decide in 10 minutes, then the operative phrase is leave it, do something else, go away. The best thing you can do is go outside and go for a walk and look at the trees. But
Mhm.
as you know, another thing you can do is just do some exercise, stand up, go into another room, get yourself a nice cup of tea, or talk to your animals or your children or your spouse, or just leave it. Do something else. And
With the
then,
idea that in the back your other system will kick in, something
yes,
like that.
and I started doing that without realizing it when I was a mathematician, because in mathematics you're trying to work on a theorem. That's what you're always doing, proving some theorem.
Mhm.
And I would work on those things for hours and hours and hours and hours with a pencil and a paper, not a computer. But and then when I was so tired I couldn't work anymore, I would leave it, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, and bingo, in the shower, there it is. And I thought that you had to work hours and hours and hours and hours before you could leave it, before you could. And then I didn't know what was going on. I hadn't heard of Kahneman at the time. I didn't know about System 1 or System 2. Now I know that System 1 solved the problem, helped you make that decision, whatever it was. System 1 does it. System 1 doesn't sleep. So if you are sleeping, System 1 is working away on it.
And
And
and what you're saying is, yeah, just 10 minutes,
10
give
minutes,
it give
that's
your
all you need.
system 2 10 minutes, and then yeah, if you don't have a solution, then let it go. That's really
Yep.
powerful way to look at things.
That's all
Um,
you need. That's all you need. That's enough, because you're either going to solve it quickly or you're not. And if you can't solve it quickly, now it's going to take a while, and there's no need for you to waste your conscious System 2 effort, which is limited, by the way, wasting that staring at the screen or working with your pencil and paper or focus. We have this illusion that focus is how you solve the problem. Focus is not how you solve a problem. System 1 does whatever it does as it does it, and we can't force it, we can't make it do anything. We have no way of communicating with System 1. We have to wait until it's ready to communicate with us. So we just leave it.
I
And
like
either
that. But it still needs to, I think the system needs to have time also. I see a lot of people, we're losing focus after very quick because of social media, because of the world is going much faster. But I'm not sure if we're busy doing social media or lots of other stuff or television, that the system one is still working as well as if we would just be bored or something like that.
System 1 is already working on it. As soon as you
Mm.
started on the problem, and it could be anything. So back in the day when I was writing code, I'd get stuck on some problem, and I was either trying to debug something or get the algorithm right. And I thought I had to sit there and stare at that screen for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And
Mhm.
then finally I'd say, I'm going to go get a cup of tea, and I would stand up and go get a cup of tea. And when I did that, when I
Boom.
stood up, there it was. So system two was actually getting in the way of communicating with system one. We're
Hmm.
sort of trying to take over to say, no, no, system two, that's where thinking happens. That's where my creativity is. No, it isn't. It's in
Not.
system one. System two
Yeah.
is linear, slow, focused. System two is not where your problem solving, your ingenuity, your innovation lies. That's all system one. And the best thing you can do is get out of the way. Go do
Hmm.
something else. Leave it. And as you've done that, now system two, we don't really understand how this happens. System two has a chance to say, hey, I know how to solve this. I've been trying to tell you for the last 10 hours, and you wouldn't really pay any attention because you're so focused on listening to me. There's so many creative geniuses, technical, musical, artistic, who had that ability to just leave it behind and they go for a walk. Beethoven used to walk in the woods and all of a sudden he would see the entire symphony. It would all be laid out. All he had to do was go back and write
All
it
right.
down.
Right. Hmm. Yeah,
No
I remember.
stories, songs, compositions have all been written that way. They just appeared.
Yeah,
And
I
now
heard many
all you have to
stories
do is
about
write it
musicians.
down. Yeah,
All of a sudden it's there. I also remember Ken Beck talking about, yeah, when it's good that you end your day with a broken test if you don't know it. Typically I try to, yeah, I want to solve it and then go home. No, 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 it's much better have a broken test, and it helps in two ways, because if it's hard, like you say, your other system will figure it out during the night. And the
yeah,
other way it helps is also, even if it's not that complicated, the next day you know immediately how to start because you have a problem to solve. And
yeah,
somehow it's already in your mind, even if it's big or not big. So you can kickstart your day immediately with these kind of things.
yeah,
That's it's a good yeah. I've read a lot about both about Kahneman, but I never thought about maximizing to 10 minutes on problem solving. That's a really interesting tip yeah, to help and use both systems, because you, like you say, it's a slow system. You shouldn't give it too much attention and too much. Yeah, that's
yeah.
really nice.
And also the solution, even if you come up with one, it's not as good if you
Hmm,
force it. And especially if you're tired or at the end of the day and you force it and now you come up with some way around it, whatever it is, it's not very good. Whereas the solution that system one is going to hand you will be,
much better.
may not be perfect, but it will be better. It will be
Yeah.
better. And of course, you can always go around again. You can look at what system one hands you and say, well, that's pretty good, but maybe I should leave it and then go off and see what else it can create for me. And you can iterate on system one thinking. I wouldn't have believed this. I wouldn't have believed it if you had tried to tell me this. But now, since reading Thinking Fast and Slow and looking at all the follow on research, and now I do it. I do it myself. Now I am a believer. And I wish some 80-year-old had told me when I
20
was
years
much
ago.
younger. I've wasted a lot of time when I could have been out taking a walk or talking to my husband or playing with my dog or something. I don't have a dog, but I could have been doing all those things. No, I was sitting staring at a screen or at a piece of paper.
Trying to solve a problem.
I will get this. I will get this. And coming up with things that probably weren't as good as they could have been.
Yeah, I remember a discussion, well, more an argument with one of my children years ago, and It was a problem at school that couldn't be solved, and this is one of the children that usually had solved things very quickly, and now it was, I don't remember anymore. It was math. No, it was not math. It was history or something, and he couldn't understand it, and so lots of discussions, lots of, and I can't do it and whatever. So big drama, and then when things got normal again. So when the drama was gone, and that took at least an hour or two, when the drama was gone, then everything flowed automatically. And like you say, there was a lot of pressure. It should solve. I need to do it, and lots of pressure. And again, first take the time to relax, and only then, and then it was in 10 minutes. It was over. In 10 minutes, he worked it out. But
Yeah.
first the drama, and it's like you say, we are so focused and we want to have that system fix it, and no, we need to relax and then have trust that the other system will take over and do that. That's
Yeah.
really wonderful advice. That's and like you say, yeah, maybe an 80-year-old or a 50-year-old tried to tell you earlier, but you didn't listen, or you were not ready. That's also a possibility.
I don't know.
We don't
I think
know.
the lesson most of us heard was, don't you get up from the table until you've solved that problem. That's kind of what I remember hearing most people tell me, or certainly in organizations. If your boss walks by and sees that you're not sitting and staring, then now your boss is not going to think you're working.
hmm I remember that in some of the earlier jobs that if I wasn't at my desk writing code or doing something, it looked, and sometimes, and I remember going to the bathroom just to have 10-minute break to think, because that was the only way to get away from input, and away from people thinking I should do something. And
Yeah.
luckily, I was not in an organization where it was not allowed to go to the toilet. So I had this is where the place, I heard that sometimes in factories that they have limited time on toilet, that I didn't have. But that was indeed, I didn't realize that that was what I was doing. I was taking time to, and maybe not actively working on the problem, but by the time you come back, poof, the answer is there. That's
Yes.
the kind of thing what you're saying. So thank you for sharing this, because this will help me. So I'll when I will be 80, I will think about learning this as a 50-year-old. So thank you very much. Um,
Uh,
Brings me to the other thing we talked, or you already or talked about, that we are connected over the internet and everything. So what have you learned about remote working? Because you talked already about, being connected to people. Is there something that you learned that you want to share with us?
so the pandemic has really brought a lot of us closer than we ever would have been. So
Mm,
I do two things online. I do work related things where I talk to people at companies and go to conferences. And what I've seen there is there will be people from all over the world. There will be people there who have never had a chance to go to a conference because they couldn't take the time, they didn't have the money, they weren't able to travel. But now all they need is a Zoom link
hmm
and they can be there. They don't have to travel, they don't have to spend money on a hotel, and they can go anywhere. They can go anywhere in the world. They can hear any speaker they want. And usually it's either free or not very expensive. So all of a sudden, people are coming in and collaborating and having a chance to be involved when they never had that before. And that's not
Yeah.
just true for the work environment. As I mentioned, I'm a musician, and there is a way of playing together, and that
Mm,
requires that the leader make a recording of all of the different parts, if it's an orchestra or a multi part composition. So there's a recording of all of those parts. And now all of us are connected by Zoom and we play along with the recording. So that does work. And,
mm,
and now we see the same thing, that professional musicians who were able to offer a workshop only to a limited number of people in the past can now have hundreds of people connected, people who would never have been able to have a workshop with this professional musician, would never have been able to take the time or the money or the effort to go to some place to work with these professional musicians. Now they can go anywhere. They can do it all the time. Every week there's some professional musician offering a workshop, and for $20 or some minimal amount of money, they can take advantage of this wonderful opportunity. And the professional musicians would never have done this. They didn't do it in the past. But now they do. They offer these online sessions. So we have people who can take advantage of these opportunities that were never available, and now they are. And that brings so many people in who were never able to contribute, participate, collaborate. It is awesome. I love it.
Yeah, this is again something that I think I would love to hear in the comments what people have been doing online that they have not been doing online before, because that's indeed something I recognize. I have been going to conference all over the world, but I've never been able to go to evening events, for example. I've been once or twice to an XTC, so the Extreme Tuesday Club in London, just the times when I was in London, but that's like once or twice in 5 years. And this year alone, I think this is already the 10th time that I went there in just the last year or something, because it's multiple times a year. And yeah, I just can, like you say, I just log online, I see my UK friends back, and I can go to after it. I can go to my own bed, sleep with my family, and get up in the morning with my family. So yeah, I feel much more connected to. I haven't been to the United States in a while, mostly because of your previous president that I didn't want to visit. Uh, but um, but yeah, it's and then now it's the pandemic. But thanks to this, I indeed I can connect to you. I can connect to so many of my American friends that I haven't seen in 5 to 6 years. And it's wonderful. And I've been connecting to people in Pakistan, and even in Ukraine. Well, I've been talking, thanks to with WhatsApp and others, with people who are now hiding in bunkers and whatever, to give them some kind of support, because it's yeah, this is a totally different world that we're in. In that sense, I'm really grateful that this happened now and not 20 years ago, because that would have been a
Yes.
whole lot worse. It's
Yes.
yeah. So in that sense,
And
yeah,
and
and
also, yeah, also we know a lot of it will continue because, as I mentioned, I'm a musician. There is an organization now that says we plan to continue this even
Hmm.
after people are able to meet in live events. We are going to keep this organization of people who are connected all over the world, and we are going to continue to play together because many of them would not be able to have any other sort of interaction with other musicians because they're in remote areas, they can't travel, they don't have the money for the travel, they just don't have the time for the travel. So a lot of this, I think, this benefit will stay.
Hmm.
We're going to keep it. We're going to keep the good things.
Yeah, I definitely want to. I'll get in touch afterwards to ask for the exact links for these organizations. So I'll put them in the show notes as well. So if people want to learn about this definitely. And I recognize what you say. Just some time ago, I recorded a similar session with Lisa Atkins, who said the same thing. Is that I think much more harder about in the future which are the conferences I want to go to, because there is so much more that I have to connect online. And it's not that she doesn't want to go to conference anymore, but she really wants to focus. Okay, is it worth my personal investment going away a week from my family? Is it worth the investment, both the money wise, also for the environment? Is it worth going on a plane, traveling for 2,000 miles or more, or 20,000 miles, just to be there, have a 1 hour talk, and then go back? It's probably isn't worth the investment. So, yeah, that definitely we need to look and look at the value. What's the value, and is it in corporation? Is it in balance with some of the costs, and not just the money
Yep.
cost, but the whole different kind of costs? And
Yep.
like you say, if we can reach more people going online, it's yeah. This is also part why
Absolutely.
I'm doing this series. I want to connect to the people that I know. Well, first of all, reconnect with people like you that I've known before, and find new friends, but also share it with people to see, okay, how can I do this from home? And after this, so okay, I spend an hour talking to you that I could spend with my family, but this is at this moment I don't need to be at the conference, so I can do this, and after this is done, I can just be with my family again. And so you can do the same thing. So that's, yeah, that brings a lot of value there. So
Absolutely.
that's a really good thing to share about. Yes, let's take at the good things. I want to go to the next question that we talked already briefly before about it. Is that a book? Well, maybe not the last book, but I know you're a big reader. So, Master and the Missionary, and I have this as well. For the people who can't see it. So, tell us some more about this book.
So people were asking when I give a talk about thinking fast and slow. We already mentioned that in Kahneman's model, there are two pieces to thinking, system one and system two. And I always get the question that, well, is this left brain versus
Mm,
right brain? Or if not, what's the connection? And I didn't really have a good answer. They are not the same. We can't say system one is left brain and system two is right brain or vice versa. We can't say that. I know that's not true. But what is the relationship? And so a couple of years ago, I saw a review of the book, which is called The Master and His Emissary. And the master is the right brain. So it's got these
mhm,
two pieces. The master is the right brain, and the emissary is the left brain. And the the metaphor goes back to a sort of an old myth about a king who was the master, who knew everything, who was the expert, who used to send out people to represent him. They were the emissaries. And the problem he had was that every now and then the emissaries would begin to think that they knew everything
mm.
and that now they
For
were
the
the
master.
experts when really they didn't know that much and they were only designated to cover a certain area. They had a limited expertise. So it's from an old fable, the title. And of course, in the book, he's claiming that the right brain is being taken over by the left brain. So it didn't turn out to be the kind of book I really wanted at all. But it's nonetheless is very interesting. It's a huge, huge book. I don't know if you can see how big it is, but
Hmm.
it's
Yeah, sound.
enormous. It took me forever to read it. And it's the kind of book that I'll have to read again if I'm really going to understand it. But that's his premise. And it fits nicely with the discussion we just had because we know that system two likes to take over. We
Hmm.
know that system
Yes.
two wants to try to solve the problem. System two wants to keep you sitting, staring at your screen until you've worked that. He doesn't want to leave it, doesn't want to give up, doesn't want to hand it over to system one. System two believes that, well, I can solve this. Just let me have it. I'm almost done. Give me another hour or two and I'll have it. I will. I'm almost there.
And that's also
And
what the kind of message that we are taught as children. Like, if you work hard enough, you can solve it, and you can work it
yeah,
out.
And so he's saying that that's what's happened over the history of people, is that we
Hmm.
used to be more intuitive. We used to not be so left brain. We used to have more a sense of creativity and innovation, of mind wandering, of daydreaming, of
Hmm.
allowing our minds to just go in a number of directions. And now we are so focused and we are so concentrated, we are so left brain. So that's the message, basically, of the book. And he has an enormous amount of science and his enormous amount of evidence from art and music, politics, history in general. It's a huge, huge book with an enormous amount of work behind it. But that's the short message, is we are becoming too much left brain, which really isn't system two. It's not a clear mapping, but maybe a close relative. I don't know.
It's related, yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, I haven't read the book for all just for the state, but it's I read a lot about left brain, right brain, a lot of discussions. Also, is it really? Does it exist? Do we have it? And it's there is definitely still a lot to learn in that whole direction. I think. About how our brain works, there is still a lot that we haven't discovered, or that maybe people have discovered and that we don't know yet, or that we don't, like the whole system one, system two. It's like you say, it exists already for a while, but many people don't understand yet the full consequences. And like I just learned now, 10 minutes just focusing is enough to let the other part take over. So that's a good
And
message.
I think the other thing is, we, even those of us who live a long time, we don't live that long. And so our sense of history is distorted by what we see. So we know
Mm,
a lot of younger people, for instance, have never seen a war. You know, if you were born after the Second World War, that was the last major, major war that involved almost the whole world. If we weren't alive for that, we don't know what that's like. And so there
mhm.
are things that we didn't see, that we don't understand, that we really have no sense of. We can't make sense out of it because we don't live long enough to see enough
So,
things so that we can put it all in
into
perspective
context.
and really understand it. You can study history, of course, but most people don't. They take a history course or they learn a few things, but our perspective is so limited because our lifespan is so short. And so
And
we
I think
can't see it. We just
I
can't
think it
see it.
I think a lot depends also on what we've learned. I recently heard, I don't know if the numbers are correct, but I heard that there's like in the United States, 20% or something believe that the earth is flat for whatever strange reason. I was like, what? I have a hard time to believe that the number is 20%, but there
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised.
well, just the idea that people would believe that
I know.
is insane, and it has to do with bad information, with not learning it at school or whatever. So I'm sure that there is a lot of things out there that I don't believe because I've just not been taught correctly, and like you say, because I don't have the perspective. It's easy to blame others for not knowing, but I'm sure that I have other things as well that, like you say, I have never encountered and I don't know. So that's because I don't like the war and what's happening, but still I'm not living it. The closest thing I have is some friends who are telling me that they have to hide, or that they have discussions with their partner about fleeing and fighting, and that's frightening me. But that it's still not. I don't have to live that decision. I don't live there, so it still is different. And so yeah, there's a lot of experiences that I don't have. You have a lot more, or 30 years more, and like you say, there still is a limited number of experiences that both of us have.
Yeah.
um, and learning, like you say, this is then a great book, but you need to read it twice. Fast and Slow is another book. I think I read it 3 times by now. I'm still not sure if I understood it correctly. I'm almost finished with his next book, Noise, from
Noise.
yes.
I
it's
just
uh
started that. I just
it's uh
started.
it's a wonderful book, but it's even thicker than Thinking Fast and Slow. So it will
Yes.
take me also again more time.
And
And yeah,
it had three authors, so it's got to be three times as much.
yeah. Well, I think it's better written in the sense that it reads easier. But yeah, I haven't been to the full end, so maybe I still need to finish it before I can say stuff like that, because there might be other things in the end that I'm not getting. Um, But it's a wonderful book again. This is
Yes.
the kind of books that's really like it makes me think. And your book, Master and the Mystery, looks like that's another of these to read and to learn.
Thank
I want to go to, for me, one of the most interesting questions, and especially with you, I'm really interested in what is the kind of question that you think I should ask you, and what's the answer?
So the question is, what's it like to be 80 years old?
Hmm. Well, that's definitely something I would like to know, because I'm not there yet, but I hope to be there one time. So Linda, tell us, what is it to be like to be 8 years old?
So to answer the question, I have to tell you about my daughter.
Hmm.
I only have one child. Her name is Amy. And of course, she's a lot younger than I am, and she has a lot of energy. So several months ago, she decided she wanted to do something for my birthday.
Hmm.
It's a special birthday. So she contacted Mary Lynn Mans, and the two of them decided they would send email to as many people as they could, asking them to mail a real birthday card. Not an email, not a LinkedIn message, not a Twitter message, but a real birthday card through the mail. So they had to go buy a card, write something on it, and get it in the mail. And they sent it to my daughter. So on my birthday, she came over and she brought a big stack of cards. And she said, "Here, pick one." And so I did. And it was from Rebecca Werfs Brock, a friend of mine who lives in Oregon. And I thought, what are you doing with this card? It's a birthday card for me. What are you? And I saw this huge stack of cards. And that's when she explained to me what she had done. I'm still reading those cards. I haven't gotten through all of them yet.
Well, you still haven't gotten all of them, because the I had the intention to write one as well. Marilyn and a few others reached out to me as well. Um, I had hoped to actually record this message before your birthday and then send something out, but that didn't work out. But I still have a card lying around here that I said I still want to send out. So there will be more coming out. So
Well,
there's more.
there are still more coming every day. I don't get them. My
Okay.
daughter gets them, and she comes over every now and then. She doesn't live too far away, and she brings more cards. So I have more cards that I still have to open. And then, of course, I have to write all these people. I have to send them an email to thank them for the card, and then they reply to me. So this just goes on and on and on. And so that is what it should be like to be
From
80,
80. Hmm.
to look back and to get this huge stack of cards. And so this goes back to your earlier question of what have I done? And
You
I don't
create
know the
something like
answer
that.
to that, but whatever it was now led me at 80 to see this network, this pile of connections, all of these wonderful people all around the world who took the time to get a card to write something very special to me that I will keep forever, even
It's
to 81, 82, who knows how long. I will read these cards over and over and think how lucky I am to have all these connections. And of course, my wonderful daughter and Mary Lynn, who started
well,
this for me.
it's a nice gift that you get from your daughter.
Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely, and it also shows that she understands what you bring. I mean, you say, I don't know what I did to have this network, but somehow your daughter understood, Amy understood that you have this network of people that care about you.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And
that's indeed,
it's
yeah.
ultimately gratifying. It's almost almost makes it worthwhile to be 80. Almost, I
Well,
think.
the yeah, the message I keep saying when I recently had a friend who became 50 and said, "Oh, I don't feel well because I'm 50." And it's like, yeah, but it's better than the opposite, because if you don't,
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
the alternative is dying, so that's definitely better. So
Well,
it's
yes, and we know that Madeleine Albright just passed away. We are all flying our flags at half staff for her, and we will be through Sunday. She was 84,
mhm. So
where she had a massive impact on the world, was an amazing, amazing woman, Madeleine Albright.
well,
Yes.
Uh, it's not that she doesn't have, but then my immediate reaction is, yeah, with your books and with a lot of your talks, you also had an amazing impact on at least the agile world.
Oh, thank
But I
you.
think broader. I mean, the patterns book, that the Fearless Change book is that you wrote with Marilyn, is like, I I don't even know if I linked it to agile when I first read it, but I do know people who are not really in the agile world, who know the original book, because yeah, they think about change, and they think about how can do transformations or other things not necessarily linked to agile, think about this book. um, your presentations that you do, you talk a lot about the research. I think that's important. You show the example of you. Okay, I've done it at 50. I done a PhD. That's a huge example, I think, as well. Yeah, so that for me, you're an example, but I think it's not just me. I think there's many people that, and the fact that you get so many, I was about to say business cards, but I mean, uh, that you so many cards are written for your birthday, that tells is about the people that care about you. So you definitely have, that I can of course, I can of course only speak about myself, but if I look around me, that's what I think, that there's a lot of things there. Um,
Thank
and
you.
you're welcome. You're welcome. For me, that brings me to that last question. That who do you think I should ask next? Is there anyone that you want to invite for the next, or one of the next interviews?
So I'm ashamed to admit that I don't know who you've already talked to, but if you I thought of two people immediately. Maybe
Hmm.
it's because of the birthday cards. I don't know. But if you haven't talked to Dan North,
Hmm. He's on my list. So,
okay.
this is how the way how it works is, I have about 200 people on my list,
Oh wow.
and I have invited 50 so far. But there's a lot of people that I wait to invite until somebody gives me an excuse, and Dan North is definitely one of these people I don't know yet if I invited him, but I think he's just on the list waiting for someone, because Dan is one of these people that I know somebody at least will invite him. So why should I invite Dan? Maybe say a little bit about Dan. Why should I invite him?
So Dan North is an amazing guy. He's so intelligent. He reads so much. He understands so many different things. We have a lot of people, not only in the agile community, but in the world in general, who are very smart people, who are good at what they do, but they don't have the breadth, they don't have the insight, they don't have the wide understanding that Dan does. I feel like I've known him forever, and that whatever I want to talk about, he has already thought about, he's already have insight to share with me. He can add something so that I now have a different way of looking at whatever it is. When I talk about hanging around younger people, I mean hanging around people like Dan North. Not to
Hmm.
say there aren't others like him, because there are. We are so lucky to be surrounded in our community by people who are like that. But when you said, who should I invite next? His name just popped into my system one. And I said, well, that would be my first choice. And then I thought, oh, well, I don't even know if you've already talked to him.
But
But if you haven't,
definitely, I haven't recorded anything with him, so that's for sure. So I will, well, I will wait until this interview goes live to invite him, because I think it's a wonderful introduction for him to see why he should be on there. So that, thank you for that. And I feel that you had already a second name, so let's talk about a second name. Who else should I invite?
I was also going to say Dan's a musician.
Hmm. That's something I didn't know about Dan. I know a lot about Dan, but that's something I totally didn't know.
Yes. Yep.
So that's
He's also a musician. So, and he adopted a child a few years ago. So we get to talk about children. So he can talk about children as well.
hmm,
Yeah.
okay.
And then
Yeah.
the second name that popped into my mind because of a special birthday card is somebody who's younger than I am, but who has the same birthday.
Hmm.
I have an unusual birthday. It's St. Patrick's Day. I don't know whether you celebrate that in your.
No, and I know when it happens, but I didn't. We don't usually don't celebrate it,
So
except
it's,
if
an,
we're near an Irish pub where they celebrate it, of course. But,
so it's a wonder. It's a great gift from my parents to give me that day, because it's not a holiday. We don't, observe it as a holiday in the United States, but everybody celebrates it. So
mm,
in Nashville on St. Patrick's Day, if you went downtown, everybody would be wearing green and drinking green beer and celebrating St. Patrick's Day. So it's an Irish holiday, but everybody celebrates it. So it's a wonderful, wonderful birthday. And every now and then I run into somebody who has the same birthday. And every now and then it's a very special person. And every year we remember we remember each other. And that's Diana Larsen.
hmm. Yeah, I knew that. I was waiting for the name because I knew you had the same birthday. It's it's interesting because when Marilyn sent the mail for your birthday, I put it into my calendar. I was like, wait, this is Diane's birthday. Did I mix it up somehow? And
Yeah,
then on the birthday itself, it turned out to be indeed the day of both of you. So yeah, it's I find it wonderful that two wonderful ladies in the agile community that meant so much for the agile community also share a birthday. That's again an international festivity day, let's put it like that, like St. Patrick's Day. So it's yeah, it's yeah, serendipity on its best, I would say,
yeah.
to
And
because
I'm
right
I'm
now.
sure you don't if you don't need me to say anything about Diana Larsen, but I met her at the retrospectives gathering. She introduced me to Norm Kurth. And she has been a mentor, a friend, just somebody who's shared a lot of things with me. I love her. I love Diana.
Well, just maybe for people, what when you so this is a good thing you talk about the retrospectives gathering. I think many people these days know Diane for the book that she wrote about retrospectives with Esther, but maybe don't know that there is actually it's all a weekend. I think the retrospective gathering where it's really focusing just around retrospectives that's been going on for more than 10 years, I think, even
Um,
longer.
I haven't been.
Um,
I haven't been for a long, long time. But we used to alternate. We'd have a gathering in the United States. I hosted it a couple of times, and they came to Phoenix, Arizona, and then we've had many in Europe where people who are interested in retrospectives get together. It's for several days, and we talk about. Well, it's all open space, so we talk about anything. One year I talked about all of the cognitive neuroscience behind better meetings, and I said, how can we do better retrospectives based on the latest neuroscience? So you can talk about anything, and the
and
people who are there are just amazing people who really care. It is so much fun. It's just a wonderful time together, and I love all those people. And I should also mention Esther. It's just Diana and I share a birthday, and so I thought of her first.
it's but isn't for whatever strange reason I was not able to go to retrospective gathering. It's almost every year on my calendar as something I want to go, and it's probably one of the first ones I'll go to first again in physics. But uh, do I remember correctly that retrospectives gathering there is also that the family is more or less invited, or it isn't something around the families? I don't remember anymore, but
Well, it certainly can be, and people did bring their families, and we did have time when, for instance, if we were in a special place, like when we came to Phoenix, we had times when we did a little sightseeing and we took people on trips. We had one in the UK where we went to Stonehenge. I will never forget that. Um, Diana and I were at the same gathering and we got to go into the middle. I mean, if you go to Stonehenge now, you kind of have to stay on the outside and walk around it.
mm,
But we were able to actually go into the middle of that. And I have pictures of her standing in the middle of Stonehenge. And it was just awesome. Yeah. So, yeah, there
but
are family
that's how I
things.
remember it exactly. It's a kind of a conference, but it feels lot less corporate. It's really much more family thing. It's a nice. I would say being friends together, learning about retrospectives and everything around that. That's how I always remember people talking about it. So that's definitely also one of the things to make publicity for. So
Yeah.
thank you for bringing that up. Where this also means this is actually I just look at the time. This is the longest conversation I had, but it's been
Sorry.
so wonderful. And no, I think it's fine. I mean, like you said, you're the person with most of the wisdom that I talk to, so I think it's kind of okay to have that much time. So if people want to reach out to you, Linda, what's the best way to reach out to you?
I'm on LinkedIn. If you could just search on Linda Rising on LinkedIn, you'll come up with a way to connect. Yeah, that's great. I'm
Go
on
on,
Twitter, and you can go to my website. There's a way to send a message to me.
and that's the websites.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I'd love to hear from you. Tell me what you're thinking and help me
and
learn.
if they reach out to me, I will give them the address of your daughter, and you get even more birthday cards. So that my you can get some more cards. Amy will love to bring them to you. I'm sure. So we'll get you some more cards for them. Well, to read maybe for the next 30 years or something like that. A lot more cards to read.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. It's well, it's it's 9 hours and 30 something like that. So in here in the evening, it's I forgot already. What was it? 2 o'clock when we started. So it's
So it's
three.
now 3:37 in the afternoon, and thank you
Exactly.
for inviting me, Eves. It's a pleasure. I've so enjoyed talking to you.
Well, it's the pleasure is all mine. It's always nice. The conversation I did with Lisa. She talks about it. It felt like we're sitting in a bar or in a boat at an agile conference, and this
Yes,
feels that's the kind of feel I want to bring, lads. It's just the two of us talking in a bar where we have friends sitting around us, listening in, and they can reach out into the comments and yeah, ask questions or whatever. It's not live, so they can't bump into that, but still they can interact with us if they want to. So thank you for your time, and
my pleasure.
I'll hope to see you back somewhere real life at some point at the moment that the pandemic
Yes,
and the war is over. So we'll keep in touch that way.
yes.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.